Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. So, give me one moment. Zainab, can you come back here? My mic doesn't allow me to get all this here. Zainab, thank you. I have my lovely assistant here. You just, as parents do, can you just bring this closer to me? Thank you. Why, thank you. That's all right, thank you. So that was lesson number 1, how we can train our kids to come to us and bring us something that's literally a few inches away. And they do it, alhamdulillah. Those days are gone when kids would do that for us, but it can be done. So, I brought a friend with me, and I just wanted to oh my God, you are going to talk about parenting? Like you? Yeah, like I have 3 kids. My son's 19, my daughter is 17, and then my little daughter is 10, so that qualifies you, right? Well, I've been through it, been there and done that and still doing that, but I can't say I have all the answers. You have no answers. Really? Yeah, and you think everybody wants to hear what you have to say? Well, you're being kind of rude. Like, you're not even cool. Excuse me, I'm quite cool. No, you just have to just get with the times, you know? Get with the times. I'm pretty much with the times. And you know what? You have to be a friend to your kids, you know? You can't tell them what to do. I don't know. Do you have to be I love my kids. You don't even have time for your kids. You know nothing about bringing up kids. I know so many people who are just like better parents than you. I think you've had your say. I think we'll talk later. Oh, I'll talk to you all the time because I'm that voice inside you that tells you that you're no good at parenting. Oh, well. Thank you. So that was an inner voice, the little voice inside us that tells us as parents that we don't know what we're doing. The voice inside us that tells us that we're not with the times, that we're not friendly enough, that we don't love our kids enough, we don't have time for them, and the one that tells us that we're just not qualified to be a parent or to even give anybody any advice about parenting. And you know what? I have realized after years of parenting, and it's a work in progress, and I don't have perfect kids, and I'm not a perfect mom, but I've learned a few things. I've learned one thing, that when you let negative people talk to you, these voices get internalized. And these are the voices that talk to you and make you feel like you can't do this, and you'll never succeed. That voice that I was talking to right now was actually the sound of my own teenager, my own kid. These are the things our children say to us. Oh, Mom, you're so uncool. You're not wearing that, are you? Right? Stuff like, everyone's parents are like so nice, but I don't know about you. And you know, I would have believed all this, but thankfully my job involves talking to a lot of young people. And a lot of young people actually love me. So I've heard some positive voices. And they've shown me that I can be a good parent because I'm a parent to many children who are not my own. A lot of strangers who call me mom. And I realize that I do have some good things to offer. And sometimes our kids don't want to listen to us simply because they're our kids. Doesn't mean we don't know what we're doing. So I'm here to just give us some things to think about, to ponder about, not giving any answers, but I will give you some of my own examples, and I hope that there will be enough time to really get into some of the things I want to say. So that metaphor of bringing up these little children, we'll have a little garden of little children. And, we have this metaphor about, they need nurturance and they're like flowers. They need sunshine and water and soil and everything will be so perfect if we just use your gardening skills. But we forget that we're trying to garden in a battlefield. We're in this place, we're trying to do gardening when there are people who are throwing bombs at us. And sometimes it's not from only outside. It's not only social media, it's not only TV, it's not only other people's children's influences and whatever's happening in high school, all that stuff that makes our lives a battlefield. But often the bombs are from within, when our own family doesn't allow us to parent properly. When there is not a unity between the husband and wife, when there is no communication within the family, so a dysfunctional family cannot function, and parenting takes a hit. So a lot of things have to go right, and that is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has so many du'as in the Holy Quran to remind us that you're not in this alone. There is a higher source. Access it. Today, I'm not going to focus on the religious component as much because, alhamdulillah, the rest of the conference is a lot about that. Today, I want to share with you some of my little bit of expertise that I have as a psychology graduate and having had a master's of education. And as an anti-racist education counselor, I talk to a lot of young people, and I talk about psychological issues on the radio and on TV. So there's a little bit I know, inshallah, and I'd love to share that with you. Just that a lot of us, whether we have kids, about to have kids, or are in the throes of parenting, we're in the battlefield. The warning is turbulent years ahead. And they're not turbulent because teenagers are bad people. They're just growing up. There's a lot of stuff going on inside them. Hormones are playing havoc, their bodies are changing, and they're getting a sense of autonomy, and they suddenly don't love us anymore. Suddenly, they hate us. Suddenly, we are the worst person in the world. You know why? Not because suddenly their eyes opened. Now they know the real us. No. Suddenly, they realize they want to do something by themselves, that sense of autonomy, and that's a good thing. Psychologists will tell us, child-rearing experts will tell us, that separation anxiety is a good thing in a child because it makes them realize that, oh, I am somebody else. This mother is not all one with me. I was in the womb, so I was one, but now I'm separating, and it doesn't feel comfortable. There's a discomfort out of the comfort zone of the womb. So that separation anxiety causes that child to cry and to fight it. When they become teenagers, there's the same kind of process going on. More distancing from the parent, and that autonomy is necessary because we want our children, we want to empower them to be out there in the world and to fend for themselves. Unfortunately, especially because with that immigrant mentality where we've come here for the education and for safety and for a better life for our children, what we've done is we've zeroed in on that so much, focusing so much on that we've forgotten that our role as parents is not to lose our children in the process. What I mean when I say lose is we don't want to lose them from the beauty of Islam. And so we want to have them be empowered to fend for themselves, but not without God. And so today, let's think about that. We want to help our children be able to fend for themselves, have an education, etc., be able to carry themselves in the world, but they shouldn't do it without the support, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us, if we are with you, no one can defeat you. But if we're not with you, no one can save you. So there's a lot I want to share. There's this trend these days, right? As that voice inside me was saying to me, how are you going to be a good parent? You can't be a friend to your parent, to your child. There's this shift. And it's a good shift because we came from a time, and it's not just us. Every society was once an authoritarian society. Society has moved forward, and we are now more relaxed. And we understand that you've got to make it palatable, whatever message you're giving to anybody. And yelling at someone is not the way to teach. Raise your words, not your voice, right? It's rain that will make that flower grow, not thunder, right? So truly, we don't want to be authoritarians, absolutely. But in this effort and this beautiful utopian thinking that, oh, we should be parents, we've forgotten something. We're not here to win a popularity contest. We've been assigned a huge job, a task. When that baby is born, and you're thinking, what happens if it gets sick? What happens if it falls? What happens if it's teething? It's all physical. All the considerations are, how do I survive, make this child survive? The shift after that has to be, how do I give it a moral compass? How do I make it spiritual? But you know, somehow we're jumping and we're going right into, how do I get you into the best Ivy League schools? And we want to do that, but we don't want to lose the essence of being a Muslim. Maybe we've misunderstood what it means to be a friend, right? Here we are gardening in this war zone. First of all, an attitude shift. That we have to see that we are the fortress. We're not fighting with each other. Might be a battlefield, but we're not enemies. We are in this together. We're in this together, and time is limited. These kids, before you know it, you look at them and you're like, OMG. You're 18. I forgot to tell you some stuff. And now, like that plant that's now growing way over here and there, you can't even control it. Sometimes you got to snip it. Sometimes it's full of weeds. And it's flawed. But alhamdulillah, all is not lost because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is always there to guide people. But He didn't tell us to just wing it. He said, be alert. If you're in a battlefield, first of all, you have to get your troops together and tell them, listen, friendly fire is not going to do it. You don't kill your own people. We're here to fight that enemy that's trying to infiltrate and trying to change our essence. And so it's important to give this army some guidance and tell them what needs to be done. Plan a strategy, and we keep ourselves organized. So being a parent means being in charge. Can you be in charge when you're a friend? Yeah. Don't we work with supervisors at work or even here at the UMAA conference? There's a hierarchy of rule. People are nice, but they still tell you what to do. Being your friend doesn't mean that you get away scot-free. It doesn't mean that we don't get the work done in this home. So remember always, you are the parents. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gifted you with this so that you could be a parent. And it's not about that popularity contest. It's not about trying to make our kids love us. Love they will, inshallah. Problem is, we love them a bit too much. We love them so much, and you know, since they were born, they're drooling, and they're cuddly, and they're cute, and you see them and you melt. And you spend all these years just falling in love with them. And then they turn into teenagers, and they say, what are you telling me what to do? And we're like, no, don't stop loving me. I need you. When you love somebody too much, you can't think straight. Love, but don't forget what you're in this for. So we have to remind them, we love you, we're your friends, but we are in charge, and we do have a work cut out for us. Let's understand what the concept of friend is. The demeanor has changed. We're no longer Mr. Authoritarian. You do what I say. You do as you're told. Okay, we're moving from that, but we still do what has to be done. So our demeanor has changed, but the ethics and principles. What does Islam tell us? The Holy Prophet ﷺ has said, who is your best friend? The best friend is a person who's best in behavior and character. So you want to be a best friend to your kids? Absolutely. But if you don't have something to model, then really your children need a better friend. And I've learned one thing. If you haven't grown as a human being, as a Muslim, as a person who interacts with somebody on a social level, if you haven't worked through all those things, teenage years are going to be even more turbulent. Because suddenly the spotlight is on you. This child who used to think that you're a God is suddenly realizing you're human. And now our flaws, when everyone has flaws, they become highlighted. And our children now are disillusioned. And if we don't have anything to model, if we can't forgive each other as spouses, for example, if we can't forgive people in the community, if we keep talking about those in-laws or those relatives, we don't want them at our weddings, what are we modeling? And you know, one of the saddest things are that we really want our children to be better Muslims than us. We send them to Islamic schools. We make them learn how to do marsiya and noha and be at every majlis and do the nara hedri and all that. But we don't wear hijab. But we don't do all those things. So what happens is they're like, what's the double standards? Why is it okay for you and not okay for me? So if you're going to be a friend, be the true friend that Islam asks about. And says on the day of judgment, friends will look at each other and say, I wish I'd never met you in my life. Why? Why have you ever come into my life? Because you are the cause of my destruction. As parents, God forbid our children say, you didn't teach me how to pray. You should have scolded me. Even now, as adults, don't we look back and say, my mom should have thrashed me when I was rude to her. Then I wouldn't be rude to her now. She should have put me straight. So a person will follow the faith of their friend, so let's be that friend. And who is your best friend? The Prophet says is a person who points out your drawbacks and gives you a gift by doing that. When Nabi Isa alayhi salam was asked, what's a friend? He said, he's the one that if you look at that friend, it reminds you of Allah. And when they speak, it increases your own knowledge. And every action of theirs reminds you of the hereafter. So subhanallah, actions speak louder than words, and we need to practice what we preach. Because, you know, children, they close their ears. They don't want to hear us talking, you know, yada, yada, yada. But when we do what we do, and we do it correctly, even after our death, they say, my mom used to do this. I've got to keep it up. Haven't we continued the traditions of our families simply because mommy used to keep the 60 moms kunde, for example? Mom used to always give to charity. Father used to always do this and do that and bring people over for food. So let's teach our children by example, because children learn in a practical way. And let's get to know these children. Well, we have this friend title. That means not that you let them get away with murder. We don't even let our own friends do that to us. The way our kids speak to us, we don't need any enemies in our lives. So if you're going to be friends, that means go out for a lunch together at least once a week. Which means if you've got 3 kids, every kid gets. We go for a coffee together. And it's not, you have an agenda in your mind, but you don't say it. And you talk, and then you say, yeah, what about that thing that was happening at school a couple of weeks ago? And you find out who are these kids, what are their dreams, what are their issues, what are their daily lives like, what are their family issues. You know what? This stuff gets found out. Unfortunately, it gets found out in arguments. When we say, where were you? And then, oh, well, I have this friend. Who is this friend? And it's all about, well, you don't understand. I'm under stress. I'm doing this. I'm doing that. That's not when you want to talk about what your life is about. Has to be when you're sitting quietly, and that means watch a movie that they like. Hang around with them, play a video game that they like. It means being really organized. If I had known being a parent meant I had to be disorganized, I'd have really thought about it twice. It means you got to plan your day, you got to plan your child's day, you have to make sure you're not overextended. And social events, you have to make sure they've got Islam in their lives. They have to go for swimming. Piano lessons? No. There are parents who are actually rushing their kids to piano lessons and even dance lessons. Listen, if you're going to overextend yourself, at least be Be mindful of what kind of skill are you putting in your child that they have to perform and get some bad deeds from it all. Don't learn something that is not going to help you in the hereafter. But that's just an aside. Then we have to equip ourselves with knowledge. We have to know about how kids function, what goes on in their heads, how things can go wrong. We have to think of ourselves as a teacher with a brood of students. But because we're so busy trying to be friends, we forget we have a job to do. A teacher has her day planned, and she has to make certain lessons done. Lessons of life for us parents, but we're too busy trying to be their pal. Cleanliness, having a clean house. Can you work on an essay when your room is a mess? Can you even think when there's clutter in your life, this feng shui stuff that we talk about? It's necessary to have a semblance of order. Kids, studies find, do well in a home that is clean, in a home that is not crazy, in a home where they know that there is a schedule, that dinner will be at this time. This particular time, Dad does walk in through the door. This particular time, everything is turned off and we're all on the prayer mat. When you create these kinds of moments in your home, it creates some kind of, it's like going into a McDonald's. You know what a McDonald's is going to look like. You know what's on the menu. You know that they're going to say, would you like fries with that? Like, you know what's going to happen, right? And it gives you peace sometimes. No one should feel peace going to McDonald's. But when you know what's happening in a place, then you can function. You can think in between those areas of consistency and live a little between those times to deal with the other stuff in your life. And then, as a parent, taking care of you. This is that battlefield. We're gardening, and we're so stressed. We can't garden in peace. We've got all these people calling us things. We've got people yelling at us, this, that, and the other. We need recreation. We need to plan our meals in advance. We need to go to the spa. Seriously, when things are really going wrong in the day, say, okay, I'm going to be nice to myself. I'm going to go eat something really nice, all alone. I'm going to go get a massage. I'm going to go for a walk. Because if you don't rejuvenate, your kids are going to get a stressed parent, and your parenting is going to be stressful and stressed. So this communication about family members, keeping a pulse on the family life, being aware of the dynamics of the relationship. Is there sibling rivalry going on? Is the extended family, is grandma creating some kind of needfulness that's causing issues in the grandchildren? Is there something going on that you need to have a pulse on? And this thing is the worst when you don't get along with your own spouse. Because remember, you're in charge, and your co-pilot and you, if you don't get along, you're going to crash that plane. And as a friend always talks about, a cockpit. You're the pilot, you go to the cockpit, you figure out what you're going to do, and then you go and fly your plane. And you make the passengers feel like everything is in control. There might be a little turbulence, just put your seatbelt on, and in a few minutes we'll be landing in Chicago. Meanwhile, there's crazy stuff going on in the cockpit, but they don't let their passengers know that. Otherwise, people will panic, and they might even make the pilots stressed. Parents who are fighting are just making it harder on a child, because it's not easy being a teenager. And the teenage brain, with the mind and the soul and the heart and everything changing, they're oscillating between childishness and adulthood. They throw tantrums. You say, you of all people, my mature, with it, brilliant, scholarship winner child, made this decision? What were you thinking? Where was your brain? That's the whole point. Their brain is not always a Harvard brain. Sometimes it's still in kindergarten. They have irrational fears and thoughts. They're getting a sense of self. They're finding their place in the social world. And then they're realizing, hey, I'm not so good at this. Wow, other people are more beautiful. Whoa, this person, this is this. To realize your weaknesses, to be behind the desk, to be always being taken places, to not have power when you want to be powerful. It's a terrible place to be in. To want to get somewhere, but you can't drive. You have to beg people to take you somewhere. These are frustrating things. Especially when you've got this passion of a youth. You want to conquer the world, and everyone's like, can't. First you got to clean the room. Right? So it's really hard. And they're in a hurry. So the brain, they say to us, and this is true stuff, is not developed of a child. Look at it, it grows over time. And in the adolescent years, the frontal is just not, it's not developed yet. The prefrontal cortex, which is involved in impulse and decision making, is not fully developed. That's why these kids get into a car with a drunk driver. Impulsive stuff going on. That's why they drink and drive, right? That's why they get into trouble. They do vandalism. They do all sorts of things. Their sleep clocks are all over the place. Their melatonin. There's all sorts of stuff going on. This explains the volatile hormones, and I wish I could have more time to go into this, but this is your homework. Look it up. Well, what happens to the hormones and the stress that work together, and how it explains the poor choices of the teen brain, because it's what it's running on. The CEO of the brain is not developed. That's why you and I are in charge. But we're saying, let the baby drive. That's the title of a book. And it is about courageous parenting. It is about letting a child drive a car, like a baby, when they're not ready. I spent a lot of time working on making my kids in the Islamic way of life, and I used to drive 45 minutes to take them to Islamic school. My biggest goal in life was that my children would wear hijab and would be good Muslims. I didn't care if they didn't pass in school, but they had to be good Muslims, because that was my thing. And when my daughter finally went into high school, and I think it was grade 9 or 10, when she suddenly decided maybe she doesn't want to wear that hijab. And the way I found out was a painful time. She hadn't taken it off. It was maybe a day where she decided to loosen it up a little. And just like when you speed and the cop happens to be there just on that day. Because Allah doesn't want us to mess up. He doesn't want us to do bad things. So He gets us caught quickly. And my world came crashing down. And I spent 3 days crying in bed. And she spent 3 days crying in bed because I said, what? Are you those friends I grew up with who would wear hijab in front of their parents and then not? And we went through a lot, and I've had permission from her to talk about this. And I saw how my husband had to go between 2 rooms and try to talk to her and talk to me. And I had to be that, he would tell me, you're the parent. You can't behave like this. And I said, my world is over. It's over. I can't live with this. And he told me, is it the end of the world if she makes this decision? And I said, it will be the end of the world. And I'm not here to tell you that we should force our kids to do anything. This is my story and my daughter's story. But what happened is that we ended up talking when my husband was finally able to make the 2 warring sides meet for peace talks. And as a friend, I had to tell her, this means a lot to me. And you think it's only about Islam? It's for me to have a daughter who's a feminist. I am devastated that my daughter doesn't want to understand that men will always judge you and that you don't have to take off your hijab to be accepted in this world. I want a daughter who can stand up and believe in herself. And I thought I was bringing up that kind of daughter. And we had that kind of discussion. And she cried and said, I'll do it only for you if that's what you want. And I said, right now, let me be that parent. Let me do the parenting. You're with me for a few years. Let me tell you what to do for a while. Give me that gift. I deserve something, don't I? But see, that kind of conversation can happen when you have a relationship with your child in the first place, where you can talk about your deep, dark feelings, where you can cry and say, I feel like a failure. When you do this, this is how it feels. When you don't do this, this is how it feels. And so, I'm here to say, let's be courageous parents. And realize that bonding with our teens is a lifelong investment. Because when you empower them and they go out there in the world, they're going to come home to mom and dad when the world lets them down. And we need to keep that kind of relationship, that our kids feel that they can come to us when the world lets them down. Which means, look at this family, they're playing a board game. The meal times are not about, did you do your homework? Have you showered? Who hasn't prayed? Go get up right now and pray. I mean, these are things that need to be discussed. But how can you eat when your heart is pounding and people are telling you, where have you been? What are you wearing? Who was that boy who just called? You can't eat. Thank you. And so what happens is, those meal times that that are the staple of a society and of a family life, we lose that function. Playing sports together, doing things together as a family, camping. You know what happens? You build team building. Look at the seminars we go to at work. You work together as a team to do, silly things, but it makes you like each other. Learn to do what they enjoy. These are grandparents playing video games, but there's no kids inside, okay? So, the concept of a family meeting. Family meeting tonight at 7, right. But you know what? I've seen people who do this, and we try to do this too. They tell their, I remember I wrote an article, and this father, he's a doctor, and he looked at it, he said, I love this article. I'm discussing this with my kids at our family meeting. I was like, wow, this guy actually takes a piece of written work, sits with his family and says, let's discuss this article. And how do you make that meeting happen? You turn off the Wi-Fi, and then you wait in the room where the router is located. And see, you make it important. The family meeting, look at this. It has compliments, appreciations. I mean, we work in the corporate world. We know how meetings go. You have a little bit of fun. You do this, that, and the other, and you get down to business. And the one who's in charge lets people talk, right? So you discuss family meetings. In family meetings, you have a noticeable event. You have something that you're really going to discuss. And you let your family know that we're on a mission. And this is mission control. And this week, let's go through what went wrong. Let's go through why this happened. Why were we late at the door? You got late, this happened, domino effect. What went wrong? How can we make the night before work better? This way, our kids realize we're serious about getting this stuff done. And be courageous to tell them that this is a faith that I believe in, that I love. And it's a gift that God gave to me from my parents. And it's a gift I want to give to you. And a gift is appreciated. It's not thrown in the face. Give it a thought. Please understand what it's about.